And hello there. My name is Dominic with Lounge King Radio, and I'm an admin at the Exotica Cool, Strange, and Unusual Music Group. I have a great honor and privilege to speaking to Kris J. Kraus and Skip Heller. We have a lot of exciting things going on this year with the launch of a label and its first recording, Voodoo 5. Hello, Skip and Kris.
Thank you for talking to us.
Yeah, thank you,
Thanks for
Dominic. Much appreciated.
Yeah. So why don't you tell all the folks out there all about the new record? How did this come up?
Skip, why don't you start, and I'm going to grab a copy so we can show it to everybody.
Okay, fantastic. Really how it started was I was playing Exoticon, which is a festival in Los Angeles earlier this year. And Marty Lush, the vibraphone player, and I were hanging out. We play together a great deal. And we were looking at the other bands, and Marty said to me, you know, these are all like really exotica influenced rock bands. You know, they all had full drum kits and, you know, all like that. He said, you know, if Martin Denny and Arthur Lyman reunited on this stage, people would think it was too quiet. They wouldn't be, you know, it wouldn't be what they considered to be the sound of the moment. And I thought, you know, it's really true. There's nobody doing exotica that the first generation of exotica composers would really point to and say, yep, that's a music that I participated in. So we started talking about what to do and how to do it and the different influences to bring to it, so it wouldn't just be a retro package, if you know what I mean. We didn't want to be Sha Na Na or some kind of Martin Denny tribute band, but we wanted something that generation of composers and band leaders would be able to point to and say, yep, I totally influenced that. I have a hand in that. And then literally standing to the left of Marty and I, as we were having this conversation, was Rabbi Kris J. Kraus, Esquire.
Yeah. Who Skip was, right? You know, he did a lot of things with one of my best friends, a guy named Lee Joseph. And but Skip and I's path haven't crossed. I learned about him back in the 90s when I was in graduate school at the University of Buffalo. I have a master's degree in ethnomusicology. And David Toop wrote a book called Exotica. And, you know, it wasn't really what I was studying at the time. I was studying more funk, R&B, hip hop, things of that nature, which is, you know, I grew up in the inner city. But I was always influenced in the esoteric and the exotic from thrift store culture. And, you know, like Skip said, through punk rock as well. I used to be a punk rock DJ. And so when Toop came out with the book Exotica, I picked it up and, you know, I read it straight through. Even though I had, you know, read 4 or 5 books a week for school, I still read this. And he quotes heavily from Skip in that book. So that's where I learned about Skip. And then, you know, I come out here, I'm doing music, I'm doing stuff. Our paths never crossed, but I knew he was good friends with my good friend Lee, and that eventually we'd come together, and that happened at the Exoticon, which we're actually going to be doing again this year, and the Voodoo 5 is going to be playing this year, and possibly Skip and I will be doing a seminar. There's some talk about that. The schedule's still in flux right now, but it's going to be June 8th and 9th. The first night is going to be at Tonga Hut. I believe there's going to be a roast of Sven Kirsten. He's retiring, and they're going to have an auction of his personal collection, kind of like they did with Oceanic Arts. And then the 9th is going to be at the Mayan, and Voodoo 5 is going to be playing. It's a great place. If you've never been there, it's all this, you know, it's straight out of, what is it, Skip, the 20s?
Yeah, it's like from that period of just amazing, beautiful, thematic Art Deco palaces. There's the Egyptian and Grauman's Chinese, obviously, in Hollywood. But there are also some really wonderful theaters like the Mayan and the $1 Million. and the Orpheum here. That I mean, it's given Los Angeles predilection for destroying things. Once that thing turns 25 years old, it's really a wonderful miracle that we have these beautiful old, Art Deco theaters.
I'm from New York. He's from Philadelphia. And, when you're kids, you see all this stuff on TV, right? And you never imagine you could actually be there or on stage or have anything to do with that, whether it's the Whiskey or places like that, the Roxy. The Mayan is one of those places that, I used to see on TV as a kid. And never in a million years did I ever think I'd have anything to do with that place.
Well, it's glad you guys hooked up, and you have a seminar coming up. The first time you're presenting it is later this month.
Yeah, so I've been doing seminars at the Tiki Oasis is Arizona, San Diego the last couple years. And I pitch them 3 or 4 each time. And I did one on fezzes, the hats with Robert Lopez, aka Elvez, and Lee Joseph was there as well. And then I did one on theremins with Dr. Rabbi Virus of Project Pimento, which was really great. And later this month, we're going to be doing one on what we call tongue in cheek, the other guys beyond Baxter. So it's about exotica music beyond Les Baxter, Arthur Lyman, Corla Pandit, Esquivel, the big names. We're going to focus on people that, everybody in your group should know about, but most people probably don't know too much about your Frank Hunters, your Axel Stordals, people like that. And, even
Robert Drasnin.
Robert
You
Drasnin.
worked with him, right?
Yeah.
Closely. He was like the most important, not just the most important musician of my adult life, but also he was the one that took me from being a guy who knew how to do some stuff into somebody who could really go out there and do the job and get it right. He was just a brilliant teacher. And he taught for many years at UCLA Extension and Dick Grove School of Music. He was also a brilliant saxophone player, and he was also a brilliant composer. So most people are good at one of those things. And to have somebody who was great at all of those things to have that person in my life was, that was just one of the greatest gifts. That my only way to return it is to make sure that, people don't forget about his music, because his name isn't as far in the forefront as Corla Pandit or Les Baxter or Martin Denny, but he is as great as anybody was ever great in that world, in the film and television writing music world. And I miss him every day. So every day, something I do draws on the experience that I had with him, or some aspect of the craft that he taught me.
There, you could probably hear it in the Voodoo 5 CD.
One of the things that Bob mastered so beautifully was female vocal in front of mallet percussion. So that's the hallmark of the recipe. You listen to Chant of the Moon, and it's that, yep, mallet percussion, female vocal, and on the 2 records that I produced, mallet percussion, female vocal. And after we finished Voodoo 3, somebody asked me in an interview, is there enough material for a Voodoo 4? And the quality of the other material was not up to the other 3. I said, there's not going to be a Voodoo 4. So that's why there's a Voodoo 5.
You had Mark Riddle on vibes. So tell us a bit about Lena Marie Cardinal.
I had heard Lena Marie. We were on an Ima Sumac tribute concert together, and because I had played with Ima Sumac, I was asked, would I come in and participate in that performance and play on Malambo #1? And yeah, love to. Sure, why not? You hear a lot of people try to imitate Ima Sumac. It's almost a pastime, if you know what I mean. Because they think all you have to do is sing extra high. And no, it's not like that. I will be the first one to tell you. Ima Sumac was like her own chapter in vocal history. So how she sang low notes, how her time worked, how her sense of how to propel rhythm vocally worked, how many notes she could hit up here. You know, you it's not a party trick. She had a very deep talent and a very formidable technique. And I heard Lena, and I just was like, "Wow, you're you know, you can
And
really you're hitting this exactly the way it's supposed to be. You're not just an imitator of this vocal style. You're a participant in the music culture." And and then we started going out, and the more music that we revealed to each other, the more we found we could do. You know what I mean? She could she could sing, you know, stuff with words, as opposed to Ema, who is really more of a make me an instrument, and the lyrics tend to be more pitched mouth noises. Um, she could read really well. She could sing the jazzier stuff, whatever it called for. So when I thought small exotica group, the first thing was like, well, I want to have a female vocalist and mallet percussion. And the obvious female vocalist was Lena. I mean, I've worked with a lot of really terrific vocalists, but nobody who had this command of this language. So it was her, but it was also the combination. I can't say enough about how important Mark Riddle, also known as Marty Lush, is to this whole thing, because he really understands not just Arthur Lyman, but also Cal Tjader. Also, just the kind of sound effectness to mallet percussion. He's very discreet the way he does things. And then the steel guitar player we have, his name is Connor Gallagher. There's like a long history of steel guitar and exotic. People don't think about it because we automatically think vibraphone and marimba because of Martin Denny and Les Baxter, Robert Trustin, and that focus. But a guy named Alvino Ray was all over a lot of that stuff. Frank Cates, and an album by a budget group called the Surfmen, where he is just, blazing all over it. So to be able to have that, also Santo and Johnny, before I forget, did a great exotica album called Offshore. And that's one of the reasons why we do Offshore on the record, is because I wanted to give it up to Santo and Johnny. And also Leo Diamond, who I'm a huge fan of, and he's one of the other guys we're going to be discussing in the seminar. So I did not want to go out there and do an imitation of Robert Drasnin, but there's no way anything I do, whether it's in jazz, whether it's in film music, whether it's exotica, is not going to have his thumbprints all over my approach, because he did so much to form me and guide me. But also the idea of the guitar specifically, because I'm a guitar player, the guitar having a role in exotica, because there hasn't been that much of that. That's important to the history of exotica, because it's one of the few things that hasn't been really explored yet. Mm-hmm. And then obviously the rhythm section had to be real, real, real good. So I got the two best guys I know and said, hey, want to make less money than you could ever make playing in a regular Latin band or something? And they both went, yeah.
That would be Cesar Ventura on percussion, right? I'm looking at
he was in a group called the Boogaloo Assassins, and I used him on the Joe Bataan record that I produced recently. And he's got this really great propulsive style, but he's also got this really elegant touch. And then Paul and I have been playing for a million years, and he was in the group Orchestra Superstring, who with DJ Bonebreak, we go back a million years, and he's just the right guy for anything I can think of. We played Jewish music together. We played a lot of country music together. He also, the bass that he played on the record is the same bass that's on Julia's Her Name by Julie London. And the steel guitar that Connor used was Buddy Merle's steel guitar from the Lawrence Welk show.
Oh,
Like, not just the same model. These are the actual ones that these guys pulled out of their cases.
And, Dominic, but I think, the listeners are finding out why this is a true exotica record. There's no electric instruments on it. As Skip says, we're digging deep with the influences here. And he's talked about Dresden, but I don't think he said that he produced Dresden and brought Dresden back on the Dionysus label. And that's where you get the Voodoo 2 and the Voodoo 3. Or cravats, if you want to call
Cravats.
it.
you mentioned Pink Panther, and Henry Mancini's 100th is coming up next week.
Yeah.
What other plans have you got for other projects with, tell me more about Black Fez.
And we just thought it'd be a cool idea to start like this kind of Masonic organization / record label. And we did a whole bunch of records with Dirty Walt. Then I did a record label called Sonic, Sonknick, and that was with artists in Seattle. And if you know anything about basketball, they used to be the Sonics, and I'm a New Yorker, so the Knicks. So Sonic, it's a play on words. And then we got Black Fez, which is really, really, really what I've kind of always wanted to do, because the other stuff was more rockish. And it was really exciting to do this record with Skip, because, I've been collecting exotica since I was, a little kid, going to the swap meets and the thrift stores and all that, and presenting on it and things. We're actually started to work on 2 other records already. And one of them is with a country guitarist. His name's Dave Gleason. He lives here in San Diego, but was in Nashville, lived up in Berkeley, been all over the world, put out a number of records, highly respected Telecaster player. I met him buying records. He was there buying records when I was buying records, when we were buying exotica. And he was like, hey, check this out, check that out. By looking at him, you would never guess he's a hardcore exotica guy, but he's almost on Skip's level. Gleason is probably in between us, because they're both musicians and I'm not a musician. But I was talking to Gleason and I said, hey, why don't you do a record with Skip? 2 Telecaster guitar players doing exotica with a country twist. I hate to say the word surf, but a little bit of those aspects in it. A little bit of spaghetti Western aspects. I mentioned it to Skip. Next thing I know, they're booking studio time. So also another record that hits a little bit closer to home for both Skip and I, because we are both, Jewish. And I actually happen to be a rabbi as well. Skip and I have a record of spoken word / Jewish music that we're planning to make together to release in December for Hanukkah and the holidays. But the Black Fez label is kind of amorphous. It's kind of like, we're going to do what we want to do, but it's going to fit in to the narrative of the stuff we like. And the reason I call the label Black Fez is I've always been infatuated with fezzes and exotica and exotic places, and Charlie Chan and all this, and they'd have mixed metaphors and mixed cultures and all this. And when I wear a fez, I always wear a black one, because I don't feel it's appropriate to wear a Masonic one, because somebody earned that. I collect them, but I don't wear them. I just wear the black one. And the Black Fez is kind of like a black slate. You can put anything on it. And so that's kind of where we get Black Fez. And, when Skip and I started talking to each other, we're like, I buy any record that says bongos. I buy any record that says cha-cha-cha. I buy any record that say percussion. I buy anything that says, whatever, those code words. Black Fez is going to be about. If somebody comes to us with a Ziffer record and it's good, we're doing it. If somebody comes to us with Tibetan bowls and it's good, we're going to do it. but primarily it's going to be an outlet for Skips and my eccentric wanting to do whatever, crazy thing is out there.
That's follow your passions, because there are other people who really like this all over the world. And
Yeah,
it's amazing that you guys only known each other less than a year, but you're coming up with you're collaborating on a journal now that's coming up.
Yeah.
it was Chris's idea, but like, frankly, it is interesting as the records themselves are. And the records are certainly interesting, otherwise we wouldn't be trying to make more of them. How people collect what they collect and why they're drawn to it and how they systematize it. When you talk to other people who collect this stuff, because kind of at the birth of collecting it, if this makes sense, nobody knew what they were supposed to be looking for. So they just started finding some things, combining them aesthetically after the fact. So, yeah, okay, like technically, Martin Denny and Cal Jader, you would never look for them in the same bin in the record store. But there were certain DJs around LA, especially, who I noticed, like Senora Moore, who was playing Martin Denny and Cal Jader and Enoch Light, and it made sense. So after the fact, we all got around to where it makes sense. Now, especially after the Incredibly Strange Music books, and we will be talking to the folks who were involved in those, you started to find out that all these people around the country who were into the same 5 or 6 things as you were in, that nobody else seemed to know about. Well, there was a guy in all these different towns who was also going like, man, you really got to check out Esquivel, or man, you really got to check out Elizabeth Waldo. Oddly enough, the artist I think who we were the most united by was Pres Parado, because he was in the most thrift stores, whether they were Catholic thrift stores, Jewish thrift stores, Goodwill. Latin dancing was a craze for everybody. And really, until the Twist and Saturday Night Fever, you didn't see anything penetrate the way Pres Parado did until Chubby Checker or maybe the Bee Gees.
You want to follow up on that, Kris?
Yeah, like Skip, I came up with punk rock. That's how I started in music. But also, like Skip, I grew up in the inner city, and I think this is kind of integral to this. We both grew up in multicultural environments, not only being Jewish and Italian ourselves, but we were surrounded by Puerto Rican people. We were surrounded by Black people. So we had this wealth of musical influences, whether it was salsa, merengue, funk, whatever. And when we became old enough, we're doing our punk rock thing. And part of that is, the thrift shop culture. And, I'd be working with bands at night, promoting shows, DJing. And then, I'd get up at, 10, 11 o'clock. I'd have nothing to do till that evening. And, I would just go hunt the thrift shops. And, if I had $5 in my pocket or $10 in my pocket, I could go and find, records. And like Skip said, well, it was Pres Prado or, Herb Alpert, or, something that says bongos on it. That's what I was buying. I wasn't buying Journey or Led Zeppelin or whatever. And, we were at a period where the greatest generation was moving into nursing homes or downsizing or whatever. We're talking the late 80s, early 90s. And their children, our parents, weren't really interested in this stuff. I think, the punk rock kids and the underground kids and the anti-establishment kids, Generation X, we were all into that. And then those research books came out, and they were only available at the like punk rock bookstore. And you get those and you're like, oh my God, there's more to this. And then you see that the Cramps were influenced by that. And being in New York where this wasn't really happening, it was more in California where the Tiki revival was happening and the exotica revival. It was
there was nothing like Kelbo's where we were.
Yeah. It wasn't a thing. And, we were kind of like, outsiders to begin with, and then even more outsiders, but we got these books, and they were like holy grails. And, you try to search that stuff down. And then, I went to college, obviously. I have a degree in theater. Then I went to graduate school, and then I went to law school. So I have a very academic, scholarly bent. And, I read a lot. I don't watch TV. I haven't watched TV since I was probably in grammar school. And, I'm always reading or writing or something like that. And I said, you know what? We don't really have anything for exotica anymore. We had the Dana Countryman magazine. We had the Preston Peak magazine. And we don't really have that stuff anymore. And so much more has been exposed. Also, there's all types of people who are into that stuff, like me, that, we were either a little bit too young or somewhere else while all that stuff was happening, that have these stories to tell and have these, this wealth of knowledge to share. So I approached Skip and I said, why don't we do something that's a cross between the research books and, say, Wax Poetics? It's kind of a journal that focuses on hip hop and funk. It's been around for about 20 years. Not a magazine, not something that has a lot of ads in it. If it is a magazine, it'd be closer to Maggot Brain. I'm not sure if you know about Maggot Brain. It's a great magazine. It's put out in Detroit. It focuses on underground and lesser known artists. And that's what we're going to try to do. We're going to try to do an actual journal, and where the focus is mostly on interviewing people so they can tell their stories. But there are going to be some feature articles, like, for instance, one of Skip's projects is Caravan. How many people recorded Caravan? What are the best versions of Caravan? Things like that. And we're hoping to maybe have something in print by the fall. Most likely it would be in the winter. We named it Quizas, which means perhaps or maybe in Spanish. It's one of my favorite songs. It's a Cuban song, and it was made famous in the 50s. But it's kind of a pun in that, is it exotica? Well, maybe, perhaps. There's a wide definition of what exotica is in the broad sense. In the narrow sense, it's what Voodoo 5 does. But in the broad sense, it encompasses a number of things. So we've already started interviews with people. Hopefully we can get you, Dominic. We're always looking for suggestions. We do have some of the big names lined up because we have to, and they're obviously interesting. But I'm more interested really in what, me and the fellas back home would call the lesser Joes. People that really haven't had their say, and, because they might have a different spin on it. They might come up with some record that we never heard of. And, we want to talk to people all over the country because there could be regional things. And,
so how do people get in touch with you then?
Through the Facebook page or, however,
Right. Quizas, the Journal of Exotica. Yeah.
When I post a video, I'll put contact information.
Right. Well, this has been great talking to you guys. Thank you so much for letting me hear you talk, because it seems like our journeys and finding these things are all the same. Oh yes, go ahead.
Skip, do you want to give the elevator pitch on the Exotic Sounds of Skip Heller featuring Lena Marie Cardinal?
This is the first time I'm actually seeing it up close.
And that's on sale on our Bandcamp page. It's also going to be on sale at Arizona Tiki Oasis, where Voodoo 5's playing the main stage. Tiki Caliente, where Voodoo 5's taking the main stage. Exoticon, where they're playing the main stage. But Skip.
And also Hotel Congress, where we're playing the Plaza stage the day after Tiki Oasis.
I said it's in Tucson for those who don't know.
Oh, yeah.
Great club.
And,
if I could just give, because he'll be mad at me if I don't, if I could just give a mention to Dave Warshaw, who did the
Oh
art.
man, beautiful artwork.
He painted this with his fingers in about 20 minutes on the phone with Skip and I when we were telling him what we wanted. And he's like, I think I know what you want. And he texted us, and we're like, yes, that's it. And also Tim Lohman, who did all the graphic design on this. If I could just give them a big thank you, because if I don't, they'll be texting me asking why I didn't.
And for anybody who hears the music, they're going to look at it, and it looks beautiful. And then when you pull it out, it's a lot of like really great Latin rhythms, really moody pedal steel guitar, exotica, you know, in the sense of the mallet percussion and the female voice leading it. Some really interesting compositions and some very adequate guitar playing on my part. Very adequate.
There's an inside joke on there that I don't know if Skip intended or not. There's the only other vocalist besides Lena on there is an incredibly world famous person. I won't say who it is. This person is a household name. He's on your televisions. He's everywhere. And I ask people, I go, tell me who that person is? And nobody can tell me because nobody's ever heard his voice before.
The most famous non-speaker since Marcel Marceau, and we've got him.
And he's talking.
And he's talking. And in fact, he's reading Ken Nordine.
Okay, the variations track. I'll have to go back and see if I can recognize that. And I have to say, it's not just for exotica folks, because my wife heard the first track, Trust in Me, something we've all grown up with, and she found it very pleasant. So
every time we've played it so far for a Disney person, they've liked it. But I'm waiting for somebody to really tell me, you know, you shouldn't do that.
Thank you, Dominic. And great work on the Facebook page. You know, I know you've been at it for 20 years now or whatever, and it's grown exponentially in the last year or so under your stewardship. And nobody's doing more to promote this stuff than you are. So props to you, Dominic.
okay, that's a success and a successful busy first year.
Thank you.
Well, thank you very kindly.